So my name is Lizzie Glenzer. I am on the account executive team here at Fierce Software, working with Anchore, and we'll do some more introductions of team members here in a little bit. So this is just a little bit about who Fierce Software is. So we are a value-added reseller of enterprise open source technology, and our focus is mainly in the public sector. So the value add in value added reseller is putting on events like this. We work with our partners like Anchore to put on these events to just inform our community about things that are going on in the DevSecOps world because things are always changing and we just want to give people an opportunity to learn. So you can see on our line card here, we have some of the bigger names in enterprise open source technology. So we've got Red Hat is the main I would say the key vendor on the DevSecOps side that we're working with. And then of course, Anchore is a big part of that and kind of a complementary technologies on the DevSecOps side that we work with. And like I said, we are focused mainly in the public sector. So we put on a lot of events like this that are public, but we also do private workshops for teams around 10 to 20 people. So if that's something that your team would be interested, if you want to learn more about any of these technologies, but particularly around Anchore, today is a good time to reach out, and we can always tailor any content that your team would like to see. So our main presenter today is going to be Hayden Smith, who you will be able to see shortly. He is at Anchore. And then I will just be doing the introduction. Like I said, my name is Lizzie Glenzer. I cover the Department of Defense and Special Missions here. And Brian Jones, who is also on the call, is covering SLED and civilian accounts here at Fierce. But we both work on the Anchore team, and you'll have our contact information later if you ever need anything from us. So that's all I have for today. I just wanted to give a short introduction about who we are and what we do with Anchore. So I also have contact information here for me and Brian, as well as Graham Smith, who is also on the call. And he's going to be your person to go to channel manager wise over at Anchore. You can reach out to any of us for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Hayden to get started on the actual content of today's event. And there will be time for questions at the end, but if you have anything that comes up, feel free to put it in the event chat and one of us will be sure to get back to you. Hayden, I may or may not interrupt you if someone has a question that you're not seeing. So
sure. Yeah, thanks, Lizzie.
Yeah, no problem.
Big shout out to Fierce for having us today. It's always fun to get to work with Fierce. We've done so much together, so it's really good to be back. So today we're just going to talk about, what Continuous ATO is, and how does it interact with the current DevSecOps space that a lot of federal agencies and the DoD is playing in. Walk through a quick case study in this slide. We'll also talk about where Anchore sits in solving some of the problems that organizations face when they choose to go down this continuous ATO path and they're starting their DevSecOps journey. And we'll take a look at that in action today in a demo. And we'll walk through some of the good features that Anchore provides to help continuous ATO organizations achieve that continuous ATO. So just a quick background about Anchore and about our federal story. So Anchore was founded in April 2016 in Santa Barbara, California. A lot of companies out here that work with the federal government, they tend to be headquartered in Northern Virginia, but we're a U.S.-based company and we like our fine wines. So we decided to set up shop in Santa Barbara, California. We began working with the DoD in 2018, working very closely with the U.S. Air Force and the Chief Software Officer. Our current customers, just a few here. Platform One is a huge customer for us. We've been providing on-premise support for them via services, and also been providing, Anchore as a solution and helping drive a lot of the DevSecOps initiative home there through our product. Our core values at Anchore: openness, ownership, and kindness. So And then I add for our public sector team, we provide that mission first mindset. So providing to all of our agency partners, having that mission first mindset, doing whatever we can to put our customer and our mission first, we're gonna make it happen. Anchor at its core is, we have our roots in open source, right? So Anchor started with Anchor Engine in 2016, providing, compliance and security solution as an open source tool. We offer 100% API coverage and currently have over 50,000 deployments. And, the brains behind the whole operation here is really Saeed Zawani, who's our CEO and co-founder, previously founder of Ansible, and a former executive at Red Hat. And really, really the brains behind the operation, right, is Dan Nurmi, so CTO and co-founder there. Just talking a little bit about, shift left, like what is shift left and how does it benefit me? So just taking a look at the traditional approach on the left-hand side of the screen, right? This is probably related to someone that's following that prescriptive waterfall methodology, right? So they're waiting a long time to address security and waiting to incorporate security into their software delivery lifecycle, right? So what that results in is really organizations that have to deal with a lot of issues in runtime, which becomes really expensive and results in a lot of project delays. Whereas Shift Left, which we'll dive into a little bit deeper, really offers these core benefits of avoiding those project delays. So we're not hanging up the developer and security teams, by waiting to runtime or production to fix a security issue, because once an issue hits production, it's always going to be a lot more expensive to fix. It lowers the cost of that fix by 50 to 75%, and we're providing an additional layer of security from the earliest stages of the software delivery lifecycle. So let's kind of take a deep dive into what the traditional DoD approach to software delivery has been, right? So, I love this slide because I love the title, Enter at Your Own Risk, right? So traditionally, we followed this waterfall, development methodology, where we're sourcing, maybe we're pulling from public repos and piling in some code from our private repo, storing it in some SCM tool, pushing it to a CI/CD tool to do the build and integration. Maybe you're performing some static tests or unit tests or something like that in the testing stage, pushing it to deployment, and then you end up with running that application somewhere on a container platform. And this process is actually really rapid, right? So with the onset of containers, you're able to, deliver software a lot quicker because all those dependencies, configuration files, all that can be packaged into a container and then built on top of and shipped a lot faster to production. And you see here along the way, there's at any point, right, a new security attack, right, can introduce itself to the life cycle, or all of these could introduce themselves to your life cycle. And by the way, at the end of it, you're stuck with the traditional ATO approach, which is addressing security at the tail end of the life cycle. So you're waiting till you're about to push to production to get an ATO. That ATO then says, you're cleared to push this application or workload to this production system, and it's cleared for use by either this program or multiple programs, which results in a lot of issues, right? Because now because you don't have security involved at either of these stages, you're dealing with a plethora of different attacks that are all very costly to remediate at the tail end. And you let this build up and accumulate over time. So now your authorizing official who's controlling your authority to operate is saying, wow, you guys have just racked up all these security issues, these compliance issues. All of these need to be taken care of. And we're just finding out about it right now. So that ATO process gets extrapolated just because you haven't incorporated security into these steps. So what's our approach, right? Our approach is to provide continuous security and compliance across the life cycle. So what does this mean? sourcing, right? So we're going to validate open source and commercial containers during the development and build stages. So we're going to be looking and building a software bill of materials, looking at different dependencies and security issues early on in the life cycle. So that way we can, protect against different things like dependency hijacking, typo squatting, including malicious packages in your containers and your different images. We want to make sure that we could detect those and flag those earlier on in the life cycle. So that way you can remediate those as early as possible. In the staging and deploy phase, we're really going to be assessing the application for security itself, preventing insecure apps from going to production by having enforcement mechanisms within Anchore. So we could say, hey, we really we found these compliance and security issues, so we're going to stop this build from moving on into a production environment. And then in the runtime, we're going to be identifying issues in production images. So if we have we use Kai, which is our tool for Anchor Federal. Kai is in your cluster. It goes in and gathers those production images and inventories those for you, feeds it back to Anchor and says, here are your images running in production. We need to go take a look at these. So I like this slide because it talks about things that Continuous ATO does, right? So defining what we can accomplish with Continuous ATO and what the Continuous ATO doesn't do, which I think is almost more important. So when we're talking about Continuous ATO and then we're marrying this with the idea of continuous security and compliance, they really go hand in hand, right? So what the Continuous ATO is actually focusing on is reshaping the security framework to include security at every step of the SDLC, right? And allowing ownership of security at every step. And that's what Anchor is trying to do. We're trying to give our developers, security teams, ops teams, the insight that they need to really, own their code. So when we talk about DevSecOps, like the TLDR on DevSecOps is if you break your code, you fix your code, right? It's a little hard to fix your code if you don't know what to fix. So Anchor's goal is to provide that back to every stakeholder so everyone can have accountability over security. And what this does is it ends up integrating risk management and security alongside the development of the product. So we're doing it at every step. So as we move across that SDLC from left to right, we're accounting for risk, right? We're not throwing it out there. We're not disregarding it just so we can move quickly and deploy an application to production faster. We're actually providing more artifacts and more data than we were with the traditional ATO and waterfall approach. And what happens when you start incorporating that is that third bullet there. So we're starting to remove time wasted of developers going back and fixing code that they could have known about when they were developing it, right? So we're removing that time and that waiting period. So that way we can start pushing mission workloads on top of containers and Kubernetes clusters a lot quicker. And like I said earlier, we're providing even more robust artifacts. So Anchor being offering that 100% API coverage, you're able to query that API and gather whatever data that you need, whether it's vulnerability, compliance results, security relevant information, all that's available. So when we talk about really integrating this into a modern SDLC, which we'll see today during the demo, that API is really important because when we start talking about stringing things together and stringing together integrations, that API is gonna pay dividends for you. So just some things that the Continuous ATO doesn't do, right? We're not going to be throwing security and risk out of the window. That's something that isn't our goal. It's quite the opposite, right? So we're actually doubling down on security, right? So we're not waiting to address it at the end. We're integrating that to the earliest stages all the way through. And then when you hit runtime, that's important too, right? But it's really about integrating it early, remediating quickly, and that way you're not left with a bunch of issues at the end. The third thing is, with Continuous ATO and DevSecOps, automation is key, right? It's key to helping deploy faster, but humans aren't going anywhere in this approach. So if you look at, the DevSecOps reference architecture and all the different DoD documentation that exists out there, authorizing officials still have a key role. Sysadmins and developers have a key role. Security folks have a key role. We all have our role to play, but let's introduce some automation to make our lives easier, right? The goal is to actually just use the automation to make risk-informed, risk-based decisions, which certainly still falls in line with a lot of the risk management approach that the DoD is taking. So how does all this come together, right? If we're looking at continuous security and compliance that Anchore provides, layering on top of the ATO, what does that look like specifically with Anchore? So one, let's just break down the 4 key blocks, right? So like I said earlier, we're going to be providing visibility early on in the life cycle. When you look at the source, develop, and build stages, you're going to be getting that complete software bill of materials, tracking where your developers are pulling packages, dependencies, licenses from, and how they're using those, right? And pulling all that metadata. How big is that package? What's in that package? Should I allow this package or deny this package? All this can be used later on when you're building on, additional policy. Assessment, right? This is really critical when we start talking about continuous ATO because it really feeds off that box to the right, which is policy. So we're going to be taking our policy, whether it's our FedRAMP policy that we offer out of the box or a DoD policy, which is also pre-configured, available out of the box for all of our federal customers. And we're going to be making sure that the security checks for vulnerabilities, secrets, permissions, all that stuff is checked for throughout the life cycle. And when it fails, we're going to be generating an artifact to reflect that. And making that artifact available, right, for all those stakeholders that we just talked about on previous slides. And then as we move into remediation, right, this is probably one of the most critical components of continuous ATO, right? So remediation in every step of this life cycle that we see up at the top is really important. So we need to be able to, one, alert and detect, okay, check, right? We have that through our visibility assessment and policy, but now what, right? How do we get that back to our developers? So how do we get that back to security? Remediation. So Anchore provides automated recommendations and automation to help automatically alert your relevant stakeholders when a fix needs to be applied in order to pass. And we'll see that during the demo today. And then we have that continuous reporting element. So, when we're talking about continuous ATO, reporting is huge. So being able to report on elements you have running in runtime, what images are failing your policy evaluation, what critical CVEs you have out there. That's all, encompassed within Anchore. And what we get when we funnel all that down is really that really helps with the continuous ATO approach because now we're addressing security, we're remediating. So when we go to have our AO, our authorizing official, review our documentation, they can see that and see that security is constantly being addressed and reevaluated so that we can, achieve continuous ATO. They can manage properly the risk of their system. And then also that allows us to, push multiple times to production, enabling our warfighter or our person sitting at that federal agency the ability to receive the most up-to-date version of the application they need to serve their mission, right? So if we do our job correctly on the security and compliance side of the house, we can, help those development teams quickly deliver those applications as rapidly as possible to make sure they get the most secure and most recent version of that software that they need to do their mission. So what's a great example of this? Platform One, right? So Platform One is a place that is near and dear to the hearts of many Anchor-nauts out there. So we have a team of 4 to 5 engineers that sit on site there. So they're working on the container hardening team, working on the pipelines team there. What Platform One is really focused on is, providing a secure platform that has a continuous ATO, so other, program offices can come in and use and inherit that continuous ATO to move quicker. So they need to, push their platform or software, they could come to platform one, inherit the continuous ATO, and drop that, authority to operate time down consistently or significantly because they, platform one has such a robust model of incorporating security into that SDLC lifecycle. So what we're doing there, right? We're pulling in, untrusted software. So this is contributed by multiple third-party and cloud-native vendors, and they're contributing software that then gets hardened by a DoD container hardening team. So a lot of times that involves Anchore engineers taking a look at their Docker files and source code and things like that, and we're looking and making sure that they're falling into line with the DoD compliance policy. And the DoD compliance policy is actually enforced with Anchore, and we provide back, again, that visibility and assessment back to those third-party vendors, so that way they can adjudicate and remediate CVE findings, compliance-based findings, and then that gets approved. Once that's approved and they've remediated any CVEs or compliance findings they have, it moves forward to what we call the Iron Bank, which is a hardened container repository. So other programs can successfully come and pull those images down, and that really helps with other programs that are using Iron Bank images, because those images have already been, that risk has been approved by the Platform 1 AO. So there's been a lot of remediation that's occurred by the time it gets and lives in Iron Bank. But it's not just these customers who see the value of Anchore and the federal side of the house. So what Anchore does for our customers in Platform One, right? We're securing that marketplace, so the Iron Bank registry, right? We're trying to validate security measures and compliance measures so that they can offer those hardened images to every program in the DoD. We're trying to ensure security and compliance across the software that you deliver, right? So the container images that you're pushing, we want to validate that it follows those security and compliance best practices. We're also trying to secure the application, right? So making sure the applications that you're building are free from security risk. Okay, and talking about how the features of Anchore really play into this continuous ATO approach. We have a really good signal-to-noise ratio. So if we're talking about remediating things quickly, incorporating it into the software delivery lifecycle, we don't want to provide fluff. So we want to make sure that we're integrating our security tool to provide valuable feedback to developer. And so through our best-in-class signal-to-noise ratio, we really optimize matching in our CVEs and vulnerability feeds to help provide the really accurate CVE information back to the customer. Another key component of Anchore that really plays itself valuable in the CATO approach is our policy. So we have a flexible policy to quickly respond to AO's request to either go and make a change to the policy so that we can bring images up to compliance. And we do that through our flexible rule set and granular controls, which we'll see in the demo. And if we're talking about expanding across the SDLC, right, we have to integrate with our partners, right? And that's where I made that emphasis earlier on in the presentation about API coverage. So having that API fully available to integrate with any of our customers that expand across the SDLC is imperative to achieving that mission, not only of providing a continuous security and compliance platform, but also to achieving continuous ATO. So it's something you should keep in mind when choosing a tool to achieve continuous ATO and to integrate with your DevSecOps environments is really, what kind of API coverage does this tool have? Because that may limit you in some cases. And then ultimately, this is really like the continuous ATO TLDR, right? So we're really providing this collaboration across different teams, our development, DevOps, operations, and security teams. So allowing them to find and fix issues, having integrations to help the DevOps teams move quickly, but also securely through the lifecycle, having that API to integrate across the lifecycle, and then having the reporting metrics and everything we need to help security teams move quicker in their approval of CVE findings and compliance results and things like that. Now I'm going to jump to a demo where we could kind of see this in action. So right here, I've gone ahead and ran a job in my GitLab instance. So I can see I have a Docker file here for a Node.js app. And I've gone ahead and scanned this with my Anchore installation. So I've integrated it with Anchore using my API, and I specify that right here. So I could see I'm calling the API to return a JSON evaluation if my policy, fails. So I can go back here, and I could click on this, and I could go and see what it looks like to my developer, right? So my developer would get this back, and it says, oh, wow, I'm failing this policy evaluation. That's why my image didn't pass. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to check what I failed. And it looks, kind of verbose, but you can see here they're failing specific, RMF controls. So they could see that they're failing specific controls related to my compliance baseline. And I could see, why they're failing it. But if I wanted a really pretty picture of that, I would need to go into, my Anchor UI. So here's the Anchor UI. What this is basically when you start drilling down, right? This is going to be your cockpit where you can drive operations for how I find what needs to get fixed, and then, what can I do to help remediate as many of those items as possible. So first off, before we go back to compliance, talking about that software bill of materials. So those first few steps in the software delivery lifecycle, Anchore does a really good job at providing that automatically for developers. So for every build and every image that you build, it will automatically, the SBOM gets generated off the bat. So you're going to get that no matter what, and that includes all your OS and language-based packages. It includes all your files that are a part of that image, the permissions being set on that files, and then also, a malware scan. So including malware scanning is a really good requirement. It's found in NIST 800-190, but it's something we do by default for our federal deployments. You're also going to get a list of full CVEs. So you can filter on which CVEs have fixes, which ones do not, which ones are related to the OS. And all this information, you could click and view a specific report on the CVE. All good stuff here. But then, when we start talking about CATO, the compliance page is really where you get, all the good stuff. So here we're using our Anchor FedRAMP scanning policy. So this is for organizations that are in the process of, or maybe thinking about going and getting a FedRAMP ATO, but they're using containers and they're engaged in this DevSecOps kind of life cycle. So they really need a policy to start checking for FedRAMP specific checks in their containers. So Anchor has already gone ahead and provided, those container specific checks and mapped them back directly to the NIST control set that, commonly security and assessment teams often check for. So if we look here, we could see that we're checking for specific permissions being set on files. So this is, in direct violation of this control, right? We also see that we have a port on our denied list. So this is violating this configuration management control. And really, this is great information, right? This is exactly what we want to know because now we can tell our developer, hey, or our security team, hey, we need to go back and follow up on this. So Anchor automatically provides that for you. So you just go in here, click this box. You can even add a little note that says, please review. Add this item to what our workbench is. And through that workbench, you could then go ahead and send that off, and it integrates quite nicely with Slack, Teams, GitHub, any of those. So, those are some items for the Docker file. But if you look at the vulnerabilities, if we need to use a different package or maybe remove the package, we could say that, right? So we could just say, for example, this one, right, is curl. So we could say, please remove curl. And then add that to the workbench. then we could pop over to our workbench and provide this back to our dev, right? Super easily. So you could, go here, add a Slack endpoint, and you'll be good to go. From there, right, if we go and check out how that policy was made, and this is our base FedRAMP policy, but if you have a really sensitive mission, you may need to add additional rule sets on top of those, right? Or you may have a really specific vulnerability threshold that you need to follow. So Anchore makes that available to you. So just talking about a couple key components about the flexibility of the policy and how it really helps to enable continuous ATO. A lot of times, authorizing officials will say, "Hey, I want to get a report on certain CVSS CVEs that have a certain CVSS base score or certain CVSS impact score." So you can actually do that in Anchore very easily. So you could just go here, say I want something that's greater than or equal to a medium with a higher, something that's like a 7. And you could go ahead and assign a stop action to that, and you're good to go, right? So now that's going to spit out, only my CVEs that have a base score higher than a 7, because that's all I want my developers to worry about. You could also, filter on specific stuff in the Docker file. So looking at different, any instruction in the Docker file. So, if we have to get a report for our AO where he's like, hey, I want to monitor for certain credentials being passed in a Docker file or something like that, we could go here. This is actually already done, right? So we're scanning for different secret scans, different files, things like that. We also have an allow list and deny list with certain images, which, goes to all these different RMF controls as well. Going to reports, though, when we discussed during the presentation, generating, I'm going to jump over to my admin account real quick. So just looking at our reports here. So providing the reports back to our developers and our security teams is really important for continuous ATO, right? So that starts with a few different reports that you should be able to gather. So you should be able to gather an inventory of images running in runtime and seeing those, vulnerabilities that are really available against those images running in runtime. So having that, being able to be automatically scheduled, so you can just set it and forget it. That's it, right? And then being able to filter, I want to worry about critical, high, and medium vulnerabilities. And then we'll see what this report looks like. So you can see, hey, these are my images running, or these are my CVEs, right, that are returned against images running in my cluster. So I could see that this one is against, this is a vulndb identifier, and it's running against my HJS support cluster. And it's actually located in my Argo CD namespace. And it's actually this tag being used right here. So I can see the tag of the image that it's attached to and the time it was scanned and everything like that. So now my security team has a really good, picture of, okay, this is what that runtime looks like on the right. These are the images that are running. So if I go back, I could go and filter on that Argo image. Just dive in here. See, last seen ago, a couple weeks ago in this cluster. And it will load that result, so you can then go in and deep dive and start remediating from the runtime perspective. But then also, you need to be able to just generate results on your policy evaluation. So seeing, hey, which images are failing my policy. So I'll just name this images that fail policy. Go ahead and set this up for a schedule so I can kick this out to my AO, whenever I want. And I could see which images have failed my policy recently, and you could get really granular. That was something that we touched upon in the slides, is being able to set custom rule sets in the policy and get granular with that, but also granular with reporting. So we recognize that, when an organization is going to push the DevSecOps methodology, they may have an enterprise team with, 100 registries or, like tons of repos, different tags, thousands of tags So you may just want to generate a report on, anything like that. So if you want to filter on a specific repo or tag or anything like that to generate an automatic report, if you want to pay special attention to one, that really helps from a continuous ATO mindset. And then you could really spit those reports back out in either, JSON, CSV, or PDF format, for whoever needs them. And then, part of it, we also talked about notifications, right? So, being able to alert people when they have a fix that needs, to be, addressed is really important. So if we go here, I'll just open up this image, kind of pull up the workbench again. We'll just add a quick item right here. Add this item to a workbench. Will pop up right here. And then we'll go ahead and send it to my security team that this really needs to be addressed, right? So boom. And now I got a result, which you heard that nice little Slack notification in the background. But really providing that automated function from that notification perspective really allows people to address security super early, remediate those fixes rather quickly. And that way at the end, when you're ready to submit for ATO or have your ATO reviewed, by the AO, that you don't have a ton of findings. So, that really makes that process go a lot quicker. That's all I have in terms of presentation. I'm going to open it up now, for some Q&A. So any questions out there from the team?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything come across the chat. Maybe you just absolutely nailed it, Hayden.
That was my security team calling about the notification I just sent them.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, so I guess if there's no questions, if you, really liked what you saw today, you can reach out to either Graham or I. Graham is a public sector channels manager, so he could get you in contact with the right people, or if you want to have an extended conversation, talk about where you guys are in your DevSecOps journey, how Anchore could help, or anything like that, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. If you like, our tools, you could check out, both our enterprise product or our open source tools out there on GitHub. So you can find us on GitHub and check out, our open source products with Gripe and Sift. But yeah, I mean, that's about it.
Okay. Yep. And like Hayden said, feel free to reach out to me for anything. I threw my email in the chat just in case you missed it on the slides. I can help connect you with anybody you need, get anything set up. So feel free. With that, Lizzie, is there anything you want to end with?
No, just thank you, of course, Hayden, for taking the time to do this and putting this together. Yeah, we'll be sending out a follow-up email, and you'll have that shortly. So if you guys have any questions, like Graham said, either take his email and send it over to that. Otherwise, you should email the alias that you got in the emails for this event. So thank you so much again, Hayden. We appreciate it, and thank you everyone for joining, and hope you have a great day.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.